Tonight, you will touch the glimmer of Zen wisdom passed down for millennia, the truths about acceptance that settled beside ancient temple lamps. Over the next 2 hours, let these stories be like mountain springs, cleansing your tangled thoughts. Adjust your pillow, let your shoulders sink naturally, and let every muscle relax. Now join me in gently closing your eyes, feeling the coolness of air brushing your nostrils. Breathe in slowly, letting the air fill your lungs like a bellows expanding with the softest of winds. Hold it for a moment, just long enough to feel the coolness. Kiss the back of your throat, then exhale, releasing the breath as a sigh that melts into the silence around you. Notice how your shoulders drop a fraction lower, how the tension in your jaw softens, as if the very act of breathing is undoing 1,000 tiny knots in your muscles. Tonight, let us journey to a valley where a silver stream winds through moss-covered stones, its current singing a lullaby that has echoed for centuries. Above it, the moon hangs full and heavy, a pearl strung on the dark velvet of the sky. The year is 1472, but time here is irrelevant. What matters is the monk standing at the water's edge, his robes brushing the damp grass, his eyes fixed on the moon's reflection trembling in the stream. His name is Koji, and he has traveled for days to reach this remote temple, seeking enlightenment. The abbot, a man with a face like weathered wood and hands that have turned prayer beads for 80 winters, told him this morning, truth is like the moon in the stream. To grasp it, you must first learn to stop reaching. Now Koji watches the moon's image perfect, glowing, impossibly clear, and feels a restlessness coiled in his chest. It looks so tangible, so real, that he finds himself leaning forward, as if he might cup his hands and lift it from the water, as one might scoop a pebble from a shallow pool. Just a little closer, he murmurs, stepping into the stream. The water bites at his ankles, cold as spring snowmelt, but he barely notices. His focus is locked on that shimmering circle, which dances away from him as he moves, always just beyond his fingertips. He steps deeper, the current tugging at his robes, until the water laps at his knees. Still, the moon eludes him. When he lunges forward, hands outstretched, he splashes into the stream, sending ripples that shatter the reflection into 1,000 silver fragments. For a moment, he kneels there, dripping and breathless, watching the pieces reform into a whole as the water stills. And in that moment, something shifts, not in the stream, but in him, a quiet understanding, like a seed breaking through soil, that what he has been chasing is not the moon only a shadow, a trick of light and water. The moon itself hangs unchanged in the sky, serene and unconcerned with his efforts. Let this image settle in your mind. The monk knee-deep in water, the moon above him, its reflection mocking his pursuit. Breathe in, and with that breath, let yourself feel the absurdity of it the way we too chase reflections every day. The perfect job that glimmers like a gem in the distance, only to dull once we grasp it. The ideal relationship that shatters when our partner reveals a flaw we never noticed in the reflection of our fantasies. The version of ourselves we see in the mirror each morning, picking at the details until the image becomes a stranger we can never quite please. Zen teaches us that life is a series of reflections, impermanent, shifting, and ultimately ungraspable. The Buddha called this anicca, the truth of impermanence. He said that suffering arises not from the things themselves, but from our refusal to accept their fleeting nature. Koji suffered because he thought the reflection was worth chasing. He forgot that the real moon, vast, unchanging, and beyond all effort, was right above him the entire time. Let us sit with this for a moment. Breathe in and imagine the moon's light seeping into your skin, warm despite the night's chill. Breathe out and let go of the urge to chase anything, whether it's a goal, a memory, or a version of yourself that exists only in your mind. Modern science tells us that Koji's impulse to grasp the reflection is wired into our brains. Neuroscientists call it the default mode network, a collection of brain regions that activate when we're not focused on the present moment. This network is responsible for self-reflection, planning, and ruminating on the past or future. It's the voice that says, if I just achieve this, I'll be happy. Or why can't I be more like them? It's why we lie awake at 3 a.m., replaying a conversation that didn't go as planned, or scrolling through social media, comparing our messy lives to the curated reflections of others. The default mode network is not inherently bad. It helps us learn from the past and plan for the future. But when it runs unchecked, it becomes a loop of desire and disappointment. We chase the reflection because our brains are wired to seek completion, to fix what feels broken. We think that if we can just make everything perfect, our homes, our careers, our relationships will finally be at peace. But perfection, like the moon in the stream, is an illusion. It exists only in the gap between what is and what we imagine could be. Koji, dripping and shivering, climbs out of the stream. He sits on the bank, his robes steaming gently in the cool air, and looks up at the real moon. It occurs to him that he has spent years chasing enlightenment as if it were a prize to be won. Reflection he might capture if he meditated longer, fasted more strictly, or chanted more loudly. But now, as he watches the moon travel across the sky, unhurried and unforced, he understands that enlightenment is not something to grasp. It is the sky itself, the vast, open space in which the moon and its reflection both exist. This is the heart of Zen, not perfection, but presence. Not fixing, but seeing. Neuroscientists have found that practicing this kind of mindful breathing activates the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for calm decision-making, and quiets the amygdala, which triggers our fight or flight response. When we focus on the breath, we're not just relaxing. We're rewiring our brains to respond to stress with presence instead of panic. We're learning to watch the reflections of our thoughts without diving into the stream to chase them. Koji spends the night by the stream, watching the moon arc across the sky. He notices how the reflection changes, stretching long as the moon dips toward the horizon, fragmenting when a fish leaps, vanishing entirely when a cloud passes over. Yet through all these changes, the moon remains itself, and slowly he begins to see that his own life is like that stream. There are moments of clarity, moments of chaos, moments when everything feels shattered, but beneath it all, there is a quiet wholeness that never changes. This is the truth that Abbott wanted him to learn. Imperfection is not a flaw. It is the very fabric of life. The stream is not less beautiful because its surface is never still. The moon is not diminished because its reflection is fleeting, and you are not incomplete because your life does not match the perfect image you carry in your mind. Tonight, let us practice this truth. Before you drift into sleep, I invite you to try something simple. Close your eyes if they aren't already closed and bring to mind a reflection you've been chasing, a goal, an expectation, a version of yourself you think you should be. It might be a career milestone, a relationship that feels less than what you imagined, or even a small mistake you can't stop replaying. Now, visualize it as Koji saw the moon in the stream, shimmering, tempting, but ultimately a reflection. Breathe in, and with that breath, acknowledge the desire to grasp it. Breathe out, and release that desire. You don't have to dismiss the reflection as unimportant. You just have to recognize it for what it is. A part of the stream, but not the stream itself. Notice how your body responds to this. Does a weight lift from your chest? Does your brow soften? That's your nervous system relaxing, your default mode network quieting. As you choose presence over pursuit, the stream continues to flow, the moon continues to shine, and you, perfectly imperfect, beautifully human, continue to breathe. As we move forward, carry this image with you: the monk, the moon, the stream, and the quiet wisdom that comes from letting go of what cannot be held. Breathe in and feel the truth of it. Settle in your bones. Breathe out and let it carry you into the next moment, exactly as it is. No need to chase, no need to fix, just to be here, now, with the moon above and the stream below, and your own life unfolding like a story that needs no editing. Inhale deeply, filling your lungs with the cool night air. Exhale, and let your body grow heavier against the mattress, as if gravity itself is a gentle hand guiding you into stillness. The world outside fades, the thoughts in your mind soften, and all that remains is the rhythm of your breath, steady and sure, like the stream's endless song. This is enough. You are enough, just as you are. Breathe in, breathe out, and let that be enough. Allow your breath to find a rhythm as steady as a heartbeat. No need to force it, no need to measure it. Simply notice the sensation, air sliding through your nostrils, ribs expanding like the wings of a resting bird, then the soft release as your chest falls. With each exhale, let your awareness sink deeper into the surface beneath you, as if your body is melting into the mattress, one muscle at a time. We travel now to a small temple on a hillside, where sunlight filters through paper screens to paint golden rectangles on tatami mats. The air smells of sandalwood and ink, thick with the quiet of a space where time moves like honey. In the corner of this room, a scroll lies spread across a low wooden table. Its edges are frayed, its paper yellowed with age, but the image it holds is still vivid. A mountain range half finished, peaks rising from a sea of mist, one slope left blank where the brush never returned. This scroll was the last work of Hiroshi, a painter who spent 70 years chasing perfection. His hands, once steady as stone, had trembled in his final days, but still he sat before this scroll each morning, staring at the blank slope as if willing the right stroke to materialize. The temple monks would find him there at dusk, his head bowed over his brush, his eyes heavy with a weariness that had nothing to do with age. Hiroshi was known throughout the land for his landscapes, so lifelike that travelers swore they could hear waterfalls roaring in his paintings, smell pine needles on the wind. But those who knew him best spoke of his private torment. He had never finished a scroll to his own satisfaction. A painting is never complete, he would mutter, rubbing his calloused fingers over a finished work, only abandoned. His studio was filled with half-done scrolls, each hidden away in drawers like shameful secrets, cherry blossoms missing a petal, a moon with a smudge at its edge, a river that ended abruptly, as if the water had vanished into thin air. On his 83rd birthday, Hiroshi called for his apprentice, a young woman named May with ink-stained fingers and a habit of humming while she worked. "Bring me the mountain scroll," he said, his voice thin as rice paper. May hesitated. She had watched him struggle with it for months, seen him crumple sketches, heard him sigh at dawn. "Master, perhaps you should rest. Bring it," he repeated. And there was an urgency in his tone that brooked no argument. She laid the scroll before him, and he stared at the blank slope for a long while. The afternoon lights shifted, turning the paper from gold to amber. Finally, he lifted his brush, dipped it in ink, and held it over the blank space. May held her breath, but instead of painting, he let the brush fall. It clattered onto the table, leaving a single black dot on the untouched paper. Hiroshi smiled then, not a small, tight smile, but a wide, almost childlike one. The first May had seen in years. "It is done," he said. Before May could ask what he meant, he closed his eyes. When she touched his hand moments later, it was cold as the stone lanterns in the temple garden. Let this image settle in you, the half-finished mountain, the single black dot, the painter's final smile. Breathe in and feel the weight of all the unfinished things in your life, the project left undone. The conversation cut short, the dream you started chasing but let fall by the wayside. Breathe out and ask yourself, what if they are done just as they are? Zen teaches us that completion is an illusion, a story we tell ourselves to make sense of a world that is always in motion. The Buddha called this dukkha, suffering that comes from clinging to permanence in an impermanent world. Hiroshi suffered because he believed his scrolls needed to be perfect to be worthy. He forgot that a mountain is never truly finished. Rivers carve new paths through its slopes. Avalanches reshape its peaks. Seasons paint it in green and gold and white. A painting that claims to capture its final form is a lie. The only truth is the process, the brush moving, the ink flowing, the artist's breath mixing with the air. Modern psychology calls Hiroshi's struggle perfectionism, but it is deeper than that. It is the belief that our worth is tied to completion, that we are only good enough if we finish what we start, if we meet every goal, if we erase every mistake. Studies show that this mindset activates the brain's threat detection system, flooding our bodies with cortisol and keeping us in a state of perpetual anxiety. We become like Hiroshi, staring at our own blank slopes and seeing failure instead of possibility. Neuroscientists have found that the default mode, same part of the brain that makes us chase reflections in streams, goes into overdrive in perfectionists. It loops through thoughts of what if and should have, creating a feedback cycle of self-criticism. We fixate on the unfinished email, the unreturned call, the project that's not quite right, and our brains interpret these as threats to our identity. If I'm not perfect, the network whispers, I am unworthy. But here is the truth Hiroshi learned in his final moments. The blank slope was never a flaw. It was an invitation for the viewer to imagine, to breathe, to fill the space with their own story. The single black dot was not a mistake. It was a reminder that even in incompleteness, there is intention, there is presence, there is beauty. May hung the unfinished scroll in the temple hall after Hiroshi's death. Pilgrims came to see it, and at first, many were confused. Why didn't he finish it? They asked. It's ruined, some whispered. But over time, something curious happened. People began to linger in front of it, longer than they did in front of Hiroshi's perfect works. They pointed to the blank slope and told stories. That's where I hid as a child during storms, one woman said. That's the path my father took when he left and never returned, a man murmured. That's where the gods live, a child announced, and no one corrected her. The scroll became more alive than any finished work could have been, because it made space for life's mesances, its unwritten chapters, its beautiful, broken stories. This is the gift of imperfection. It connects us. Perfect things are isolating. They exist in a realm of their own, untouchable, unrelatable, but imperfect things. They are like open hands, inviting us to reach out, to share, to say, I am like this too. Tonight, let's practice making space for our own unfinished scrolls. Close your eyes and bring to mind something in your life that feels unfinished. It might be a relationship that ended abruptly, a goal you abandoned, a skill you never quite mastered. See it clearly, the edges, the gaps, the places where you wish you could go back and fix it. Now breathe in and imagine placing a small mark on that blank space, not to complete it, but to honor it. It could be a dot, a line, a splash of color. This mark is not a solution, it is an acknowledgement. You are part of me, and you are enough. Breathe out and let yourself feel the weight lift. The unfinished thing does not define you. It is just one part of your story, a single brushstroke in a life that is still being painted. Neuroscience tells us that this act of acceptance deactivates the amygdala, our brain's fear center, and activates the prefrontal cortex, which helps us regulate emotions. When we stop seeing our unfinished parts as threats, our bodies relax, our minds quiet, and we can finally rest. Hiroshi's scroll hangs in that temple still, its blank slope now faded with time, but more powerful than ever. Monks dust it each morning, and travelers still pause before it, finding their own truths in the empty space. Some say they can see the mountain continuing beyond the scroll now, as if the blankness has become a window to something larger. This is what happens when we accept imperfection. The blank spaces stop being voids and become doorways. They remind us that life is not a finished painting, but an endless conversation between what is, what was, and what might be. Allow your breath to find a rhythm as steady as a heartbeat. No need to force it, no need to measure it. Simply notice the sensation, air sliding through your nostrils, ribs expanding like the wings of a resting bird, then the soft release as your chest falls. With each exhale, let your awareness sink deeper into the surface beneath you, as if your body is melting into the mattress, one muscle at a time. We travel now to a small temple on a hillside, where sunlight filters through paper screens to paint golden rectangles on tatami mats. The air smells of sandalwood and ink, thick with the quiet of a space where time moves like honey. In the corner of this room, a scroll lies spread across a low wooden table. Its edges are frayed, its paper yellowed with age, but the image it holds is still vivid. A mountain range, half finished, peaks rising from a sea of mist. One slope left blank where the brush never returned. This scroll was the last work of Hiroshi, a painter who spent 70 years chasing perfection. His hands, once steady as stone, had trembled in his final days, but still he sat before this scroll each morning, staring at the blank slope as if willing the right stroke to materialize. The temple monks would find him there at dusk, his head bowed over his brush, his eyes heavy with a weariness that had nothing to do with age. Hiroshi was known throughout the land for his landscapes so lifelike that travelers swore they could hear waterfalls roaring in his paintings, smell pine needles on the wind. But those who knew him best spoke of his private torment. He had never finished a scroll to his own satisfaction. A painting is never complete, he would mutter, rubbing his calloused fingers over a finished work, only abandoned. His studio was filled with half-done scrolls, each hidden away in drawers like shameful secret cherry blossoms missing a petal, a moon with a smudge at its edge, a river that ended abruptly, as if the water had vanished into thin air. On his 83rd birthday, Hiroshi called for his apprentice, a young woman named May with ink-stained fingers and a habit of humming while she worked. "Bring me the mountain scroll," he said, his voice thin as rice paper. May hesitated. She had watched him struggle with it for months, seen him crumple sketches, heard him sigh at dawn. "Master, perhaps you should rest. Bring it," he repeated. And there was an urgency in his tone that brooked no argument. She laid the scroll before him, and he stared at the blank slope for a long while. The afternoon light shifted, turning the paper from gold to amber. Finally, he lifted his brush, dipped it in ink, and held it over the blank space. May held her breath, but instead of painting, he let the brush fall. It clattered onto the table, leaving a single black dot on the untouched paper. Hiroshi smiled then, not a small, tight smile, but a wide, almost childlike one. The first May had seen in years. "It is done," he said. Before May could ask what he meant, he closed his eyes. When she touched his hand moments later, it was cold as the stone lanterns in the temple garden. Let this image settle in you, the half-finished mountain, the single black dot, the painter's final smile. Breathe in and feel the weight of all the unfinished things in your life, the project left undone, the conversation cut short, the dream you started chasing but let fall by the wayside. Breathe out and ask yourself, what if they are done, just as they are? Zen teaches us that completion is an illusion, a story we tell ourselves to make sense of a world that is always in motion. The Buddha called this dukkha, suffering that comes from clinging to permanence in an impermanent world. Hiroshi suffered because he believed his scrolls needed to be perfect to be worthy. He forgot that a mountain is never truly finished. Rivers carve new paths through its slopes. Avalanches reshape its peaks. Seasons paint it in green and gold and white. A painting that claims to capture its final form is a lie. The only truth is the process, the brush moving, the ink flowing, the artist's breath mixing with the air. Modern psychology calls Hiroshi's struggle perfectionism, but it is deeper than that. It is the belief that our worth is tied to completion, that we are only good enough if we finish what we start, if we meet every goal, if we erase every mistake. Studies show that this mindset activates the brain's threat detection system, flooding our bodies with cortisol and keeping us in a state of perpetual anxiety. We become like Hiroshi, staring at our own blank slopes and seeing failure instead of possibility. Neuroscientists have found that the default mode network, the same part of the brain that makes us chase reflections in streams, goes into overdrive. Imperfectionists. It loops through thoughts of what if and should have, creating a feedback cycle of self-criticism. We fixate on the unfinished email, the unreturned call, the project that's not quite right, and our brains interpret these as threats to our identity. If I'm not perfect, the network whispers, I am unworthy. But here is the truth Hiroshi learned in his final moments. The blank slope was never a flaw. It was an invitation for the viewer to imagine, to breathe, to fill the space with their own story. The single black dot was not a mistake. It was a reminder that even in incompleteness, there is intention, there is presence, there is beauty. May hung the unfinished scroll in the temple hall after Hiroshi's death. Pilgrims came to see it, and at first, many were confused. Why didn't he finish it? They asked. It's ruined, some whispered. But over time, something curious happened. People began to linger in front of it, longer than they did in front of Hiroshi's perfect works. They pointed to the blank slope and told stories. That's where I hid as a child during storms, one woman said. That's the path my father took when he left and never returned. A man murmured. That's where the gods live, a child announced, and no one corrected her. The scroll became more alive than any finished work could have been, because it made space for life's messengers, its unwritten chapters, its beautiful, broken stories. This is the gift of imperfection. It connects us. Perfect things are isolating. They exist in a realm of their own, untouchable, unrelatable. But imperfect things, they are like open hands, inviting us to reach out, to share, to share. I am like this too. Tonight, let's practice making space for our own unfinished scrolls. Close your eyes and bring to mind something in your life that feels unfinished. It might be a relationship that ended abruptly, a goal you abandoned, a skill you never quite mastered. See it clearly, the edges, the gaps, the places where you wish you could go back and fix it. Now, breathe in and imagine placing a small mark on that blank space, not to complete it, but to honor it. It could be a dot, a line, a splash of color. This mark is not a solution, it is an acknowledgement. You are part of me, and you are enough. Breathe out and let yourself feel the weight lift. The unfinished thing does not define you. It is just one part of your story, a single brushstroke in a life that is still being painted. Neuroscience tells us that this act of acceptance deactivates the amygdala, our brain's fear center, and activates the prefrontal cortex, which helps us regulate emotions. When we stop seeing our unfinished parts as threats, our bodies relax, our minds quiet, and we can finally rest. Hiroshi's scroll hangs in that temple still, its blank slope now faded with time, but more powerful than ever. Monks dust it each morning, and travelers still pause before it, finding their own truths in the empty space. Some say they can see the mountain continuing beyond the scroll now, as if the blankness has become a window to something larger. This is what happens when we accept imperfection. The blank spaces stop being voids and become doorways. They remind us that life is not a finished painting, but an endless conversation between what is, what was, and what might be. As we move forward, carry this with you. Your unfinished business is not a failure. It is proof that you are alive, that you are still growing, still changing, still reaching for something more. Breathe in and feel that truth warm your chest. Breathe out and let it flow through you, softening every should and must and need to. The brush is still in your hand, the scroll is still unrolled, and that is more than enough. Inhale deeply, letting the air carry the scent of possibility. Exhale and let your body grow heavier, more at peace. The world outside fades, and all that remains is the quiet knowledge that you are enough exactly as you are, unfinished and beautiful in this moment and all the moments to come. Breathe in, breathe out, and let that be enough. We journey now to a kitchen in a mountain temple, where sunlight slants through paper screens, painting gold stripes on a wooden table. The air smells of jasmine tea and freshly steamed rice, earthy and comforting. On the table sits a bowl, not just any bowl, but one that has been here for longer than most of the monks who walk these halls. It is a simple thing, made of coarse ceramic, its glaze faded to a soft blue-grey, but if you look closely, you'll see the chip, a small, irregular churco on its rim, as if a piece of the bowl decided to wander off and never return. The monk polishing it is Master Hiroshi, his hands gnarled but gentle, moving in slow circles with a soft cloth. At 80 years old, his back curves like a crescent moon, but his eyes are clear, like water in a mountain spring. Beside him stands Taro, a young monk with a face still smooth as uncarved wood, watching with a furrow between his brows. "Master," Taro says, after watching the old man polish the chipped bowl for the third time that week, "why do you keep this one? The storeroom is full of perfect bowls, no cracks, no chips, their glaze still bright. This one is flawed. It doesn't even hold soup properly. It dribbles every time you pour." Hiroshi sets the bowl down carefully, as if it were made of spun glass, and turns to the young monk. His voice is like gravel in a stream, rough but soothing. "Tell me, Taro, when you drink tea from this bowl, does the tea taste any less sweet?" Taro blinks. "Well, no, but when it rains, and we collect water in it for the herbs. Does the water quench their thirst any less? No, master. But then what makes it flawed? Hiroshi picks up the bowl again, turning it in his hands so the sunlight catches the chip. This chair code tells a story. It was made by a young potter in Kyoto 200 years ago who cried when he saw what he'd done. He wanted to throw it away, but his master said, "A bowl is not defined by its edges, but by the space it holds." Taro frowns. "But why keep this one? There are other bowls with stories." "Because this one teaches me something every time I touch it," Hiroshi says, running a finger along the chip as if greeting an old friend. "It reminds me that wholeness is not the absence of brokenness. It is the courage to hold water anyway." Let that settle in your mind, the image of the chipped bowl, held with such care, its flaw not hidden but honored. Breathe in and imagine the rough ceramic in your hands, the coolness of it against your palms, the tiny ridge of the chip catching your thumb. Breathe out and notice how your body reacts. Does your chest feel tighter or softer? Many of us live like Taro, searching for bowls without chips, lives without flaws, as if perfection is the only worthy state of being. We discard parts of ourselves that feel chipped, our mistakes, our insecurities, our moments of weakness, because we think they make us less valuable. But what if, like Hiroshi's bowl, those flaws are what make us able to hold life more fully? Zen teaches that life is a collection of chipped bowls. The Buddha, in his infinite wisdom, pointed out that suffering arises from our refusal to see things as they are. He called this avidya ignorance, not of facts, but of the fundamental truth that all things are imperfect, impermanent, and interconnected. We suffer because we demand that the bowl be unchipped, that the weather be perfect, that our lives follow the script we've written for them. But reality is messy, and life loves to chip our edges. The question is not how to avoid the chips, but how to hold water anyway. Modern psychology helps us understand why this is so hard. Our brains are wired for what psychologists call negativity bias, the tendency to focus more on flaws than on strengths. This served our ancestors well, helping them spot predators in the grass or rotten food in the forest. But in today's world, it makes us fixate on the chip in the bowl instead of the space it holds. Our default mode network, that endless chatter in our heads, loves to point out the flaws. You said the wrong thing at the meeting. Your house isn't as clean as your neighbor's. You're not as successful as you should be by now. It's as if we have a tiny Taro in our minds, constantly asking, why keep this flawed version of yourself? Neuroscientists have found that this fixation on imperfection activates the amygdala, the brain's fear center, triggering a stress response even when there's no real danger. When we judge ourselves for being chipped, our bodies release cortisol, the stress hormone, which raises our heart rate, tightens our muscles, and makes it hard to sleep. We lie awake, replaying our flaws like a broken record, not realizing that the very act of rejecting them is what causes the pain. Hiroshi, however, knows something Taro has yet to learn. The chip is not a mistake. One afternoon, as they sit drinking tea from the chipped bowl, the old monk tells the story behind it. 200 years ago, the potter who made it was a young woman named May, who dreamed of creating the perfect bowl for the emperor. She worked for months, mixing the clay just right, firing the kiln with precise care. But on the day she was to present her work, she dropped the bowl, chipping its rim. Devastated, she ran to her master, sobbing, "I've ruined it." Her master, an old woman with a laugh like wind chimes, picked up the bowl and filled it with tea. "Does it spill?" she asked. "Only a little," May whispered. "Does it hold the tea?" "Yes, but then it is not ruined," the master said, taking a sip. It is human. The emperor drinks from golden cups, but they do not teach him anything. This bowl, it will teach whoever holds it that beauty is not in being unbroken, but in being useful, even with the breaks. May went on to become a great potter, but she never made another bowl without intentionally adding a small flaw, a smudge in the glaze, an uneven rim. They are more honest that way, she would say. Hiroshi smiles, setting down the bowl. Taro, when you see a tree in the forest, do you curse it for having gnarled branches? Do you call a river flawed because it bends? Taro shakes his head. No, master, those things are natural. And what are we, if not natural? Hiroshi asks. The same force that bends the river carves our flaws. To reject them is to reject the river, the tree, the very earth that made us. Breathe in deeply now, filling your lungs with the idea that your flaws are not mistakes, but part of your natural shape. Hold it for a moment. 1, 2, then exhale, releasing the need to be unbroken. Notice how this feels in your body. Maybe your shoulders relax, or your jaw This is your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain associated with calm, rational thinkings, stepping in to quiet the amygdala. When we practice accepting our flaws, we're not just being kind to ourselves, we're rewiring our brains to respond to imperfection with peace instead of panic. Let's think about the things you consider your chips, the way you lose your temper sometimes, the fact that you didn't finish that project on time, the voice in your head that says you're not good enough. These are not flaws, but fingerprints, unique to you. They tell the story of your life, the times you've stumbled, the lessons you've learned, the courage it takes to keep going even when you're chipped. Hiroshi uses the chipped bowl every morning to serve tea to the other monks. He says it makes them smile, because it's real. A perfect bowl is a lie, he tells Taro. It pretends it will never break, that it will never age. But this bowl, it tells the truth. It says, I am broken, and I am still here. One winter, a storm damages the temple roof, and water leaks into the storeroom, ruining many of the perfect bowls. They crack under the weight of the water, their bright glaze peeling away. But the chipped bowl, set on a higher shelf, survives. Taro finds it there, still holding a small pool of rainwater, as if nothing had happened. Why did this one survive? Taro asks Hiroshi, holding the bowl carefully. Because it was already broken, Hiroshi says. The others thought they were invincible, so they couldn't bend. This bowl knew it was fragile, so it endured. This is the wisdom of the chipped bowl. Fragility is not weakness. It is what allows us to bend instead of break, to survive the storms that would shatter the perfect versions of ourselves. When we accept our flaws, we become resilient, because we're no longer trying to be something we're not. We're just here, holding water, even with the chips. Tonight, let's practice this wisdom. Before you sleep, I invite you to find a chipped bowl in your life. Fit could be a mug with a crack, a shirt with a stain, or even a memory of a mistake you've made. Hold it or picture it clearly in your mind and say silently, I see your flaw, and I honor you anyway. Notice how it feels to speak those words, not with pity, but with respect. Now, turn that gaze inward. Think of a part of yourself you've been rejecting, a chip you've tried to hide or fix. Say silently, I see my flaw, and I honor myself anyway. Breathe in and feel that honor as a warmth in your chest. Breathe out and let go of the need to be unbroken. Neuroscientists have found that this kind of self-compassion practice increases activity in the left prefrontal cortex, which is associated with positive emotions, and decreases activity in the amygdala. In other words, when you honor your flaws, You're literally training your brain to feel safer in your own skin. As the sun sets in the mountain temple, Hiroshi and Taro sit outside, the chipped bowl between them, filled with tea. The light catches the chip, turning it into a tiny rainbow. Taro picks up the bowl, runs his finger along the floor, and smiles. "I think I understand," he says. "The bowl is not whole in spite of the chip. It is whole with it." Hiroshi nods. "And so are we, Taro. So are we." Breathe in and let that truth wrap around you like a blanket. Breathe out and let your body sink deeper into the mattress, heavier and softer with each exhale. You are not a perfect bowl, and that is more than enough. You are a chipped bowl, holding life with courage, and that is beautiful. The temple grows quiet. The only sound, the wind in the pines and the soft clink of the chipped bowl as Hiroshi sets it down. Somewhere, a stream babbles, its path winding, not straight. A tree sways, its branches gnarled but strong. And you, in your bed, with all your chips and flaws, are exactly as you need to be. Inhale, counting to 4. Hold, counting to 2. Exhale, counting to 6. Let the breath carry away any last traces of judgment, any need to be perfect. What remains is just you whole, not in spite of your brokenness, but with it. Sleep now, with the image of the chipped bowl in your mind, held with care, filled with light. You are enough, exactly as you are. Breathe in, breathe out, and rest. Let your breath find a rhythm that matches the sway of leaves in a soft breeze, deep enough to stir the quiet places in your chest. Slow enough to let each thought drift away like dandelion seeds on the wind. Inhale, and imagine the scent of damp earth rising from a forest floor. Exhale, and feel the tension in your lower back unwind, as if a rope that's been knotted for weeks has suddenly loosened. You are standing at the edge of a bamboo grove just after dawn. The air holds the coolness of night, sharpened by the temps of citrus from a nearby orchard. Sunlight filters through the canopy in thin gold threads, catching the dew on bamboo leaves so that each drop glows like a tiny diamond. The bamboo stalks rise around Yusum straight as arrows, reaching for the sky with the single-minded purpose of a prayer. Others twist and curve, their trunks bending at odd angles, as if they've danced to a wind only they could hear. At the center of the grove, a man kneels beside a particularly crooked stalk, his hands calloused but gentle, with nails stained the warm amber of bamboo sapbrush, the rough surface of the wood. This is Takeshi, a bamboo craftsman whose workshop lies just beyond the grove. For 40 years, he has walked these paths at dawn, selecting stalks for his work. But unlike other craftsmen in the village, who pass over the twisted ones in favor of straight, unblemished bamboo, Takeshi lingers by the crooked ones. He runs his fingers along their curves, as if listening to a story only the bamboo can tell. Today, he has his eye on a stalk that bends almost in a C shape, its top dipping toward the earth, as if bowing to the morning. A young apprentice stands beside him, frowning. "Master, why waste time with that one?" the boy asks, gesturing to a stand of straight bamboo nearby. "Those will make perfect poles for the farmers' huts. This one is flawed." Takeshi smiles, his eyes crinkling at the corners like a map of well-traveled roads. "Flawed," he repeats, his voice as soft as the rustle of leaves. "Tell me, what do you see when you look at it?" The apprentice squints. "I see a mistake. It grew wrong. It will never be useful for building or for baskets. It's broken." Takeshi kneels closer to the bamboo, pressing his palm against the curve. But brokenness is just another kind of wholeness." Watch, he stands, takes a small saw from his belt, and cuts the stalk cleanly at the base. It falls with a soft thud, its curve still intact. He lifts it, turning it this way and that in the sunlight. What if we don't try to make it straight? What if we let it be what it is? Let this question settle in you like rain in soil. What if you stopped trying to straighten the parts of yourself that bend, the fears that make you hesitate, the scars that remind you of where you've been, the quirks that make you different? What if they are not flaws, but just you? Takeshi carries the crooked bamboo back to his workshop, a low wooden shed filled with the scent of sandalwood and fresh shavings. Sunlight streams through a skylight, illuminating dust motes that dance like fireflies. The walls are lined with his work, a tea whisk carved from a gnarled stalk, its uneven prongs creating a perfect froth, a walking stick with a natural curve that fits the palm like a lover's hand, a bird feeder twisted into a spiral, where sparrows now perch. Chirping Dot, he sets the crooked stalk on his workbench and runs his fingers along its curve again. This bamboo did not choose to bend, he says to the apprentice, who lingers in the doorway. A storm pushed it when it was young, and it learned to grow around the wind instead of fighting it. It adapted. It survived. Is that not wisdom? He picks up a chisel and begins to carve, not against the curve, but with it. He smooths the rough spots, but leaves the bend intact. By afternoon, the bamboo has become a jijaf for a flower pot, its curve cradling the ceramic perfectly, as if the two were made for each other. When the apprentice runs his hand along it, he gasps, "It's beautiful. I never would have seen it." Takeshi sets the flower pot on a windowsill, where a single red camellia blooms. "Beauty is not in being straight," he says. "It's in being true." This bamboo is true to itself. It does not pretend to be something it is not. Breathe in and let the truth of those words wrap around you like a blanket. Inhale the idea that your flaws are not mistakes, but adaptations, ways you've learned to survive, to grow, to bend without breaking. Exhale the need to apologize for them, to hide them, to straighten them into something they are not. Modern psychology calls this self-acceptance, but Zen has known it for centuries as Mushinda no mind state, where we stop judging and start seeing. Our brains, however, are wired to spot imperfection. It's a survival mechanism. In ancient times, noticing what was wrong in our environment, an odd shadow, a broken branch, kept us alive. But today, this same mechanism turns inward, picking apart our bodies, our choices, our very selves. Neuroscientists have found that when we criticize ourselves for our flaws, the amygdala, the brain's fear center, lights up, triggering the fight or flight response. We feel anxious, ashamed, or defensive, as if our own bodies and minds are threats to be overcome. This is the self-defense mechanism at its most destructive. We attack ourselves to protect ourselves from the judgment we fear from others. But Takeshi's bamboo teaches us a different way. It does not fight its curve, it embraces it, and in doing so, it becomes more useful, more beautiful than any straight stalk could ever be. This is the neuroscience of mindfulness. When we practice accepting our crookedness, we activate the prefrontal cortex, which calms the amygdala. We stop seeing ourselves as threats and start seeing ourselves as perfectly imperfect and therefore whole. Let's try a small exercise to feel this in your body. Close your eyes if they are not already closed, and bring to mind a part of yourself that you've often labeled a flaw. It might be a physical trait, a scar, a curve, a feature that doesn't match the images you see in magazines. It might be a personality trait, shyness, anger, a tendency to overthink. It might be a mistake you've made, a regret that lingers like a shadow. Now, imagine this part of you as Takeshi's crooked bamboo. It is not broken. It is not wrong. It is simply You breathe in, and with that breath, send warmth to that part of yourself. Imagine sunlight touching it, as it touched the bamboo in the grove. Breathe out, and let go of the judgment you've carried about it. Notice how your body responds. Does your chest feel lighter? Does your jaw relax? That's your nervous system shifting from fight or flight to re-stand-eye. That's your brain learning to see your flaws, not as threats, but as part of your unique wholeness. Takeshi's apprentice learns this lesson slowly. For weeks, he watches as his master transforms crooked bamboo into works of art. He notices how villagers now seek out the flawed pieces, drawn to their uniqueness. A woman buys the curved flower pot, saying it reminds her of her grandmother, who walked with a limp but had the kindest hands in the village. A farmer purchases a twisted tool handle, remarking that it fits his grip better than any straight one ever did. One afternoon, the apprentice finds a bamboo stalk that grows in a tight spiral, as if it's been dancing with the wind its whole life. He carries it to Takeshi, his hands trembling. I think this one could be a sculpture, he says, for the temple, to remind people that God loves the twisted ones, too. Takeshi nods, his smile as bright as the sun through the skylight. God, he says, is in the twist. This is the heart of Zen. Divinity is not in perfection. It is in isness, the raw, unvarnished truth of what is. The Buddha said, all conditioned things are impermanent. When you see this, you become disenchanted. But disenchantment is not despair. It is freedom, the freedom to stop chasing an ideal and start loving what is. As the afternoon turns to evening, the bamboo grove takes on a golden hue. The wind picks up, and the stalks sway in a chorus, straight and crooked alike, singing the same song. Takeshi sits on a bench outside his workshop, sipping tea from a cup he carved from a knotty piece of bamboo. The apprentice sits beside him, and together they watch the sun set, painting the sky in strokes of pink and orange. Perfection is a cage, Takeshi says softly. The crooked path is where the light gets in. Breathe in, and let that truth settle in your bones. Inhale the idea that your struggles, your scars, your flaws are not barriers to happiness. They are the very things that make you capable of it. Exhale the need to be anyone but who you are. Tonight, before you sleep, I invite you to do something simple. Take a piece of paper and a pen, or just use your mind, if you prefer, and write down one crooked part of yourself, the part you've tried to straighten, to hide, to fix. Then, next to it, write one way this part has helped you. Maybe your shyness makes you a better listener. Maybe your anger has taught you to stand up for what's right. Maybe your past mistakes have given you wisdom you never would have gained otherwise. This is not about positive thinking. It's about seeing clearly, seeing that your crookedness is part of your strength, just as the bamboo's curve is part of its beauty. As you drift toward sleep, imagine yourself as a bamboo stalk in Takeshi's grove. You may bend, you may twist, but you are rooted deep in the earth, and you reach for the sky in your own way, and that is more than enough. Breathe in, breathe out, and let yourself be crooked, whole, and utterly, beautifully alive. Let the rhythm of your breath settle into a gentle cadence. Inhale, like the tide rolling in, slow and full. Exhale like mist dissolving into the forest, soft and unrushed. Feel the weight of your body sinking deeper into the mattress, as if each breath is a stone being laid down, releasing the tension that has been quietly holding you upright all day. Now, let your mind drift to the sound of rain, not the harsh downpour of a storm, but a soft, steady drizzle, the kind that makes leaves glisten and earth smell like new life. This is the sound that will wrap around our story tonight, like a blanket woven from water and patience. It is the 3rd month of spring in a small temple nestled between 2 hills, where cherry blossoms drift like snowflakes even on rainy days. The air is thick with the scent of damp wood and jasmine, and the roof tiles glisten under a sky the color of wet slate. In the scriptorium, a young monk named Taro sits cross-legged on a straw mat, carefully copying sutras onto scrolls of rice paper. His fingers are stained with ink, and his brow is furrowed in concentration. Too much concentration, perhaps, for he has been sitting here since dawn, determined to make each character perfect. The sutras he copies are ancient, their words said to hold the wisdom of the Buddha himself. The abbot has entrusted Taro with this task, a responsibility that fills him with both pride and fear. These words are sacred, the abbot had said, his voice like the creak of an old wooden chair. Treat them as you would treat the moon, with reverence, but not with attachment. Taro nodded, but in his heart, he thought, if they are sacred, they must be kept perfect. By midday, clouds gather low over the hills. Taro glances up, noting how the light dims, then returns to his work. He is copying the Heart Sutra, his favorite, and he has nearly finished. The characters are neat, almost identical to the original, each brushstroke measured and precise. He allows himself a small smile. This scroll will be flawless, a testament to his devotion. He rolls it carefully, tying it with a red silk ribbon, and places it on a low shelf with the others he has completed. Then he steps outside to fetch water, leaving the scriptorium door ajar to let in the cool air. The rain starts while he is in the garden, filling his wooden bucket at the well. At first, it is no more than a few drops, but by the time he turns back, it is falling steadily. He hurries toward the scriptorium, his sandals squelching in the mud, a sudden panic clutching his chest. The scrolls? He bursts through the door, and his worst fear unfolds before him. Rain has blown in through the open door, pooling on the stone floor and seeping into the edge of the Heart Sutra scroll. Taro freezes. The red ribbon is damp, and where the water has touched the paper, the ink has blurred. A character near the bottom, delicate OM symbol has run, its edges melting into the paper like a tear. For a moment, he cannot move. His throat tightens, and his eyes sting. He has failed. The sacred words are ruined. He reaches for the scroll, his hands shaking, and lifts it, as if he might somehow reverse the damage. But the ink is already set, the blur permanent. He sinks to his knees, the scroll clutched to his chest, and whispers, "I've destroyed it." His voice cracks, and he feels a wave of shame crash over him. This is what he feared most, not just making a mistake, but failing to protect something perfect. In his mind, the abbot's disappointment is already clear, his own worth shrinking with each blurred character. Outside, the rain continues to fall, tapping against the roof like 1,000 small fingers. Somewhere, a bird sings, undisturbed by the weather. Taro sits there, frozen in his grief, until the sound of the abbot's footsteps rouses him. He looks up, expecting anger, but the old man's face is calm, his eyes soft as he looks at the scroll in Taro's hands. "May I see?" he asks, and Taro hands it over, his head bowed. The abbot unrolls it slowly, running his fingers over the damp paper. When he reaches the blurred character, he pauses, then smiles a small, quiet smile that surprises Taro. "Do you know what I see?" the abbot says. Taro shakes his head. "I see a sutra that has met the rain. I see words that have touched the sky. I see a reminder that even sacred things breathe, that they live in the world, not outside it." Taro blinks, confused, but it's ruined. The character is blurred. It's not perfect anymore. The abbot sits beside him, the scroll spread between them. "Perfect," he says, "is a cage we build for ourselves. The Buddha did not teach us to preserve words in glass cases. He taught us to let them live, to carry them in our hearts, not just on paper. This blur is not a flaw. It is a story, the story of a scroll that felt the rain, of a monk who learned that imperfection is how life enters the sacred. Let that sink in, as softly as the rain sinking into the earth. You have held things too tightly, 2 letters you wrote and rewrote, moments you wished you could redo, parts of yourself you tried to smooth away until they no longer felt like you. The fear of ruining something, of being ruined yourself, is a weight we all carry. It is the voice that says, if I'm not perfect, I am unworthy. But the rain does not ask the flower for permission before it falls, and life does not wait for our plans to align before it unfolds. Neuroscientists tell us that this fear of imperfection is tied to our brain's threat detection system. When we make a mistake, or even perceive a mistake, our amygdala lights up, triggering a stress response that floods our bodies with cortisol. We feel shame or anxiety because our brains are wired to protect us from social rejection. In ancient times, being flawed or unworthy could mean being cast out of the group, which was a matter of survival. But in modern life, this response is often overactive. We treat a blurred character on a scroll, an awkward sentence in a conversation, or a messy house as threats to our very worth when they are simply part of being alive. The abbot rolls up the rain-soaked sutra and places it on a shelf beside the others, some neat, some smudged, some with ink blots where Taro's hand slipped. Look, he says, each one tells a story. This one will remind us of the day the rain taught us about letting go. Taro looks at the scroll, and for the first time, he does not see a mistake. He sees the rain, the urgency of his rush to save it, the softness of the abbot's smile. He sees a moment that might have broken him, but instead opened him. This is the wisdom of the rain-soaked sutra. Imperfection is not a failure. It is a footprint, a sign that you have walked through the world, messy and alive. The Buddha taught that life is like a river. It does not flow straight, it does not flow clean, but it flows. To dam it, to force it into a perfect channel, is to kill it. To let it flow, with all its curves and currents, is to honor it. Modern psychology calls this radical acceptance. The practice of accepting life as it is, not as we wish it to be. It does not mean we stop striving for growth or improvement. It means we stop suffering because things are not perfect. When Toro accepted the blurred sutra, he did not stop copying scrolls. He just stopped letting his worth depend on their perfection. Studies show that practicing radical acceptance reduces activity in the amygdala, our fear center, and increases activity in the prefrontal cortex, our reasoning center, helping us respond to challenges with calm instead of panic. The rain stops by evening, leaving the air crisp and clean. Taro and the abbot hang the soaked sutra in the temple hall, where the breeze can dry it gently. As it dries, the paper wrinkles, and the blurred character spreads a little, like a starburst. The other monks gather to look at it, and at first, some are confused. Why display a damaged scroll? One asks. The abbot gestures to Toro, who speaks up, his voice steady, because it is not damaged. It is lived in. It has met the world, and the world has left its mark. In time, that rain-soaked sutra becomes the most cherished in the temple. Pilgrims travel to see it, not for its beauty, but for its story. They run their fingers over the wrinkled paper and the blurred character, and they leave with a quiet understanding. Their own blurred characters, the mistakes, the regrets, the parts they wish were different are not flaws. They are proof that they have lived. Tonight, let us practice this kind of seeing. Bring to mind something in your life that feels ruined, a relationship that ended badly, a goal that fell short, a part of yourself you have criticized. It might be something small, like a missed call or a burnt meal, or something larger that still weighs on you now. Look at it as Taro learned to look at the sutra. See the story in it. The rain that fell, the hands that tried to hold on too tight, the moment when letting go became possible. Breathe in and say silently, "This is part of my story." Breathe out and say, "It does not define me." Notice how your body responds. Does your chest feel lighter? Do your shoulders relax? That is the feeling of radical acceptance, not happiness necessarily, but peace. It is the understanding that the rain falls on everyone, and that what matters is not whether we stay dry, but whether we let the rain teach us to grow. As the night deepens, let the image of the rain-soaked sutra stay with you, wrinkled, blurred, imperfect, and utterly, beautifully alive. It is a mirror for your own life, a reminder that you do not need to be unmarked to be sacred. Breathe in the cool night air, now scented with the earth after rain. Breathe out and let go of any last traces of the need to be perfect. You are like that sutra, touched by the world, changed by it, and no less precious for it. The scroll hangs in the temple still, its blurred character a beacon for all who visit, and somewhere rain falls and a young monk smiles, knowing that imperfection is not the end of the story, it is just the beginning. Inhale, exhale, and let yourself be exactly as you are, rain-soaked, real, and wonderful. Let the sound of your breath settle into a rhythm like a drum beat from a distant village, steady, unhurried, marking time without urgency. Inhale and imagine the air carries the earthy scent of wet soil. Yuho ni tu de tisi, yahu ni tu de cooked ski, fresh and alive after a summer storm. Exhale and let your shoulders release any tension they've been holding, as if the weight of expectation is melting into the ground beneath you. We journey now to a mountain path winding through a forest of cedar and maple, where sunlight filters through leaves in dappled patches, shifting like a kaleidoscope with every breeze. It is morning, just after rain, and the trail is still damp-slick in places, muddy in others, strewn with pebbles and gnarled roots that reach up like ancient fingers. This is not a path built for speed or comfort. It is a path that is unapologetically uneven, stubbornly itself. A traveler walks this path. His name is Takeshi, and he carries a woven basket slung over one shoulder, its contents clinking softly: a clay jar of water, a handful of rice cakes, a scroll he hopes to deliver to a temple at the mountain's summit by sunset. He set out at dawn with a planned steady steps, even pace, no delays. But the rain has other ideas. Now he pauses, staring at a particularly rough stretch where the earth has eroded into a jagged gash, and feels frustration flicker in his chest like a sputtering candle. Why must it be so difficult? He mutters, kicking a stone that skitters down the hillside. His boots sink into mud, and when he yanks them free, he nearly stumbles. The scroll in his basket shifts, and he clutches it protectively, as if the path's unevenness might somehow reach inside and damage what he's been charged to carry. This is not the first time Takeshi has struggled with life's uneven paths. As a boy, he cried when his calligraphy brush slipped, marring the paper. As a young man, he stormed away from a weaving lesson when his threads tangled, vowing never to pick up a loom again. He has always believed that things should be smooth, that effort should yield perfection, that plans should unfold without hiccups, that the path from here to there should be straight and clear. But the mountain path cares nothing for his beliefs. It simply is, a collection of rocks and roots and mud, shaped by wind and water and time, refusing to conform to his idea of how a path should be. Breathe in deeply, filling your lungs with that yu hou ting xin the kung ti. Yu hou ting xin the kung ti. Yu hou ting xin the kung ti. Cool, clean, alive with possibility. Hold it for a moment, then exhale slowly, and as you do, let yourself feel Takeshi's frustration as if it were your own. Maybe it's the frustration of a work project that won't come together, a conversation that went off script, a day that unraveled no matter how hard you tried to control it. Notice where that feeling lives in your body, perhaps a tightness in your chest, a knot in your stomach, a furrow in your brow. Now, breathe in again, and with that breath, offer that feeling a little space, not to fix it, not to push it away, but simply to let it be like Takeshi, letting the path be dot. Takeshi sits on a fallen log, pulling off his boots to shake out the mud. As he does, he notices an old woman ahead of him on the path. Her back straight despite her years, her straw hat tilted to shield her face from the sun. She moves slowly, pausing now and then to adjust her sandals, but there is no frustration in her gait. When she reaches a particularly rocky section, she doesn't rush or curse. She simply steps carefully, shifting her weight, letting her feet find purchase where they can. Old mother, Takeshi calls out, "Do you not find this path tedious? So many obstacles, so little ease." She turns, and her eyes crinkle with a smile that has seen many seasons. "Obstacles, young one. I see only a path. It is what it is, neither good nor bad, just is." She gestures to the ground. "The rocks are not trying to trip me. The mud is not trying to trap me. They are simply being rocks, being mud. It is my expectations that make them obstacles." Takeshi frowns. "But surely a smooth path would be better. Easier, perhaps. But would it teach you to walk?" She chuckles, a sound like pebbles clicking together. "A smooth path lets you rush, head down, mind elsewhere. This path, it makes you pay attention. It makes you feel each step, each shift, each breath. It teaches you to be present." She continues up the trail, her steps deliberate but unforced, and Takeshi watches her go. Something in her words tugs at him, a thread he can't quite pull free. He slips his boots back on, stands, and takes a step forward. This time, instead of focusing on how the path should be, he focuses on how it is. He notices the way his foot sinks slightly into the mud, and how that slight give cushions his step. He feels the rough texture of a root beneath his boot, and how it steadies him when the ground slopes. He hears the crunch of pebbles, the squelch of wet earth, the birdsong that echoes through the trees, sounds he would have missed if he'd been too busy cursing the path. Zen teaches us that life is like this mountain trail, inherently uneven, constantly changing, and utterly indifferent to our demands for perfection. The Buddha spoke of dukkha, often translated as suffering, but more accurately understood as unsatisfactoriness. The fundamental truth that life cannot be made to fit our ideals. We suffer not because the path is uneven, but because we insist it should be smooth. Modern psychology calls this cognitive dissonance, the discomfort we feel when reality clashes with our expectations. Our brains are wired to seek order and predictability. When we encounter chaos, a delayed flight, a messy home, a body that ages, our amygdala activates, triggering the stress response. We think, this shouldn't be happening, and that thought turns a minor inconvenience into a major crisis. But here's the thing, the path doesn't care what we think. It remains uneven, whether we curse it or accept it. The only difference is in our experience of it. When Takeshi stopped resisting the path, He didn't change the path, he changed himself. He shifted from a state of fight or flight to a state of flow, where his actions were guided not by frustration, but by awareness. Neuroscientists have mapped this shift in the brain when we practice acceptance. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thought, quiets the amygdala, reducing stress hormones like cortisol. We enter what's known as rest and digest mode, where our bodies and minds can function with greater ease. It's not that the obstacles disappear, they're still there, but we move through them with less friction. Takeshi reaches a clearing, and there, ahead, is the temple. Its wooden gates, weathered by wind and rain, its roof tiles uneven from years of exposure to the elements. It is not a perfect temple, no symmetry, no polished surfaces, no grandeur, but in its imperfection, there is a beauty that takes his breath away. It has been shaped by the mountain, just as the mountain has been shaped by time. It belongs. He realizes that he, too, belongs. Muddy boots, frayed patience, and all. He does not need to be better or calmer or more prepared to deserve this moment. He just needs to be here. Notice how this changes your relationship to the journey. Do you feel lighter, more present? That's the power of acceptance. It doesn't change the terrain, but it changes how you traverse it. The old woman is sitting on the temple steps when Takeshi arrives, drinking tea from a chipped cup. "You made it," she says, offering him a cup. He sits beside her, sipping the bitter, earthy tea. "I stopped trying to fight the path," he admits, "and it got easier." "Not easier," she corrects gently, "just clearer. The path was always the same. You just stopped seeing it through the fog of should." This is the practice. You see, not to make life's path smooth, but to learn to walk it with open eyes, to recognize that the obstacles, the failures, the delays, the flaws are not interruptions to life. They are life. Tonight, I invite you to practice this. Before sleep comes, bring to mind a rough patch in your own path, a situation that feels frustrating, messy, or unfulfilling. It might be a project that's behind schedule, a relationship that's not working as you hoped, or a body that doesn't behave the way it once did. Now, imagine that situation as part of Takeshi's path, not as something to fix, but as something to walk through. Breathe in and acknowledge how it feels to be in this place. Disappointed, annoyed, sad. Breathe out and let yourself say silently, "This is how it is, for now." You don't have to like it. You don't have to pretend it's perfect. You just have to let it be, exactly as it is, without adding the extra weight of "this shouldn't be happening." Notice how your body responds. Does the tightness in your chest loosen? Does your breath deepen? That's your nervous system relaxing, your brain shifting from resistance to receptivity. Takeshi delivers the scroll to the temple master, who smiles when he hears about the journey. "The path tests not your speed," the master says, "but your willingness to walk." And so it is with life. The tests are not meant to break us, but to wake us up to the feel of the mud, the sound of the birds, the miracle of each step, even especially when it's uneven. As we prepare to move forward, carry this image with you. Takeshi walking, not in spite of the path's imperfection, but because of it, more alive, more present, more connected to the world around him. Breathe in and let that aliveness settle in your bones. Breathe out and let your body sink deeper into the mattress, as if the earth itself is supporting you, just as it supported Takeshi on his journey. The path continues, and so do you, one breath, one step, one moment at a time. Inhale, exhale, and walk on. Let your breath find a rhythm like the rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze. Inhale for a count of 5, Hold for 2, exhale for 7. With each exhale, feel the tension in your legs soften, as if your calves and thighs are melting into the mattress like wax in warm sunlight. Notice how the air smells in this moment, maybe of linen, or distant rain, or the faint sweetness of whatever lingers in your room. Let that scent anchor you here in the present, as we journey to a sun-dappled orchard where the summer heat hums like a tuning fork. It is the 5th moon of the year, and the peach orchard on the hillside above the village is heavy with fruit, though not yet heavy enough. Old Toro, the farmer who tends it, stands beneath a gnarled tree, his calloused hand brushing a peach the size of his fist. Its skin is still streaked with green, a blush of pink only just beginning to creep across its curve. He sighs, a sound that carries the weight of 3 generations of farmers before him. Too slow, he mutters, as if the tree can hear and cares about his impatience. For 3 weeks, Taro has been checking the peaches daily, sometimes twice daily. Each time, he prods their flesh, sniffs their stems, mutters to himself about the weather. Last year, a late storm ruined half the crop, and this year he's determined to harvest early before disaster strikes. Perfect peaches, he tells his wife each evening, ripe but not soft, sweet but not cloying. This year, we'll have perfect peaches. His wife, a woman with a face as calm as a still lake, just smiles. Peaches ripen when they're ready, Toro, she says, kneading dough for morning bread, not when we want them to. But Taro doesn't listen. The next morning, he marches into the orchard with his basket, plucking every peach that shows the faintest hint of pink. His hands move quickly, almost angrily, as if hurrying to outrun the storm he imagines gathering on the horizon. By midday, the baskets are full, the branches bare. He piles them onto his cart, humming a tune under his breath, already counting the coins he'll earn at market. That evening, he slices into the first peach. The flesh is firm, too firm, with a tartness that makes his cheeks pucker. He tries another, then another, but they're all the same. Hard, sour, promising sweetness they haven't yet grown into. His wife says nothing, just sets a bowl of the peaches on the table and waits. By the end of the week, most of the basket is still untouched. The village children turn up their noses at them. The merchants at market shake their heads. Not ripe, they say. And Taro's chest tightens with shame. Sit with that feeling for a moment. The sting of disappointment when something we've rushed turns out half-baked. Breathe in and let yourself remember a time when you pushed too hard, hurried too fast, demanded perfection before its time. Maybe it was a project at work, finished in a panic but lacking heart. Maybe a relationship rushed into before you knew each other's shadows. Maybe a dream, abandoned because it didn't bloom as quickly as you wanted. Let that memory surface, not with judgment, but with curiosity, like Taro, standing in his orchard, finally seeing the peaches for what they are, not what he wished they'd be. Taro leaves the remaining peaches on a wooden table in the barn, where the air is cool and still. He doesn't throw them away, though part of him wants to. Instead, he tends to the orchard, watering the trees, pruning the branches, whispering apologies to their leaves. A week later, he finds his wife slicing one of the peaches into her tea. Tastes better, she says, offering him a piece. He takes it, and this time the tartness has mellowed, a honeyed sweetness emerging from beneath the temps. It is not the perfect peach he imagined, but it is good, complex, alive, bearing the marks of its slow ripening. In Zen, this is called Wu-en and doing, or effortless action. It is not laziness, but trust in the natural rhythm of things. The Buddha taught that life unfolds in its own time, like a flower or a fruit, and our suffering comes when we try to force it open. Taro suffered because he confused his desire for control with care. He thought love for his orchard meant making it conform to his timeline. But true care, true wisdom, is knowing when to wait, when to let things be. Let your breath deepen now, as if you're breathing in the scent of ripening fruits, sun-warmed, earthy, slightly messy. Inhale and imagine the sweetness of patience filling your lungs. Exhale and release the need to hurry, to force, to fix. Modern psychology calls this psychological flexibility, the ability to accept what is, even when it doesn't match what we want. Research shows that people who practice this flexibility have lower levels of anxiety and depression, not because their lives are perfect, but because they've learned to dance with imperfection. Our brains, wired for survival, are quick to fixate on threats, including the threat of not enough or not yet. This is why Taro couldn't stop checking the peaches. His brain interpreted the delay as a potential disaster, triggering a cycle of worry that hijacked his judgment. Neuroscientists have found that when we practice patience, we activate the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for impulse control and long-term thinking. This region helps us override the amygdala, which screams for immediate action. It's why, after a week of tending his orchard without rushing, Taro was able to taste the peach without anger. His brain had recalibrated, shifting from survive to savor. Months later, as autumn turns the leaves to fire, Taro sits beneath the same peach tree, his grandchildren climbing on his knees. They're eating dried peaches, those same unripe ones, slowly dried in the sun, their tartness concentrated into a sweetness that lingers on the tongue. Best peaches ever, his youngest granddaughter declares, juice dribbling down her chin. Taro laughs, wiping her face with the edge of his sleeve. He thinks of the baskets he harvested too soon, of the shame he felt at market, of the slow transformation in the barn. He realizes that imperfection, ripeness, delayed, sweetness, deferred, was not a failure. It was a teacher. This is the truth at the heart of this story. Growth takes time, and time leaves marks. The peach that ripens slowly has more depth than the one forced by heat or chemicals. The life that unfolds at its own pace with detours and delays, with moments of not yet and almost, is richer than the one squeezed into a timeline of our making. You are not a project to be finished, a goal to be achieved, a peach to be plucked before your time. You are a living thing, ripening in your own season, bearing the marks of every sun and rain that has touched you. Let's pause for a breath exercise now, one that honors the rhythm of slow ripening. Inhale for 4 counts, imagining your breath as sunlight, warming you from the inside. Hold for 2 counts, letting that warmth settle like roots growing deeper. Exhale for 6 counts, releasing any tension that comes from rushing to sleep, rushing to heal, rushing to be better. Repeat this 3 times, each breath a reminder that you are exactly where you need to be, even if it doesn't feel like it. Notice how your body responds. Maybe your heart slows, or your shoulders relax, or a quiet sense of okayness spreads through your chest. This is your nervous system remembering that growth is not a race. It is a processor, messy, beautiful, unruly process that can't be rushed or forced. For tonight's practice, I invite you to bring to mind something in your life that feels unripe, a dream, a relationship, a part of yourself you wish were further along. It might be a skill you're learning, still fumbling with the basics, a grief you're carrying, not yet ready to let go, a goal that feels stuck, as if time has stopped. Whatever it is, visualize it as one of Taro's peaches, green-tinged, firm, not yet sweet. Now, place your hand over your heart, feeling its steady beat. Breathe into that space, and say silently, I honor your timing. I trust your process. You do not need to be ripe for me to value you. Repeat this 3 times, letting the words seep into your bones like rain into soil. This is not resignation. It is wisdom. It is knowing that every unripe thing carries the potential of what it will become, but that potential is only realized when we stop demanding it hurry. Taro's peaches taught him that, and so can your unripe things teach you. They are not failures. They are invitations to trust, to wait, to love what is now instead of what might be. As the orchard fades from our minds, carry with you the image of Taro and his granddaughter, sharing a dried peach that was once too tart to eat. Carry the memory of its sweetness, the kind that comes not from perfection, but from patience. Breathe in and let that sweetness fill you. Breathe out and let go of the need to be anything other than what you are in this moment. The night deepens around you, soft and slow, like the ripening of a peach in the quiet of a barn. Your breath, your heartbeat, your very being all unfolding in their own time, all perfect in their imperfection. Rest now, knowing that you are enough. Not when you're ripe, not when you've arrived, but now, exactly as you are. Inhale, exhale, and let that be enough. Let your breath find its own rhythm, now neither too fast nor too slow, but a gentle tide that rises and falls without effort. Inhale and imagine the scent of ink swirling in the air, rich and earthy like wet soil after rain. Exhale and feel the weight of your body sinking deeper into the mattress, as if each breath is a stone being laid down, steadying you in the present moment. We journey now to a small studio tucked between 2 cypress trees, where sunlight filters through paper screens, casting soft rectangles on the wooden floor. On a low table rests a sheet of rice paper, its edges slightly frayed, and beside it, an inkstone polished smooth by decades of use. The year is 1683, but in this room, time moves like honey, slowly, deliberately, with no need to hurry. The man sitting cross-legged at the table is Master Takeshi, a calligrapher whose hands have shaped characters for over 50 years. His fingers are stained with ink, permanent as tattoos, and his eyes crinkle at the corners when he smiles, which is often. Today, he is working on a piece for the local temple, a scroll bearing the phrase, no mind, no form, words that have guided his practice for decades. He dips his brush into the ink, swirling it gently until the tip is saturated but not dripping. With a steady breath, he lifts his arm and the brush touches the paper. The first character flows from his hand, Wu, Mu, meaning no. Its strokes are fluid, confident, each line balancing strength and grace. The second character follows, Sin, Shin, mind, sharp and precise, like a bird pausing mid-flight. He pauses, blowing softly on the ink to dry it, and smiles. So far, so good. But as he reaches for the third character, his sleeve catches on the edge of the inkstone. With a soft clatter, it tips, spilling a dark pool of ink onto the paper. Not just a drop, but a spreading stain, seeping into the fibers of the rice paper, blurring the edge of the mind character and bleeding into the blank space where form should be. For a moment, Master Takeshi freezes. His jaw tightens, and his fingers curl into fists, a reflex he hasn't felt in years. Not since he was a young student, still learning to control his frustration. The scroll is ruined. The temple will need it by tomorrow, and there is no time to start over. His heart quickens, and he feels a familiar heat rising in his chest, the urge to curse, to crumple the paper, to rage at the carelessness of his own sleeve. This is the moment we so often find ourselves in, a mistake, small or large, that threatens the perfect image we've been trying to create. A typo in an important email, a burned dinner when guests are coming, a harsh word spoken in anger that can't be unsaid. In these moments, our brains kick into what psychologists call self-defense mode, a cascade of thoughts designed to protect our sense of self. I'm such an idiot. Everyone will think I'm incompetent. I should have been more careful. Neuroscientists call this the error-related negativity, a spike in brain activity that occurs when we perceive we've made a mistake. It's centered in the anterior cingulate cortex, a region involved in monitoring conflicts and errors, and it triggers the amygdala, our brain's alarm system, to flood our bodies with stress hormones. Suddenly, we're not just reacting to a smudged scroll or a burned meal, we're fighting for our sense of worth, which we've tied to being perfect. But Master Takeshi has spent a lifetime training his mind to meet such moments differently. He closes his eyes, takes 3 slow breaths, and when he opens them, his gaze is soft again. Instead of seeing a ruined scroll, he sees a blank canvas. Instead of focusing on the stain, he notices how the ink has spread not as a blotch, but as a cloud, its edges feathered and delicate, like smoke caught in sunlight. He picks up his brush again, but this time he doesn't try to cover the stain or erase it. Instead, he dips the brush in water, diluting the ink until it's a pale grey, and begins to work around the dark pool. The third character, Seem Kai, form emerges not as a single, solid shape, but as a series of light strokes that dance around the stain, embracing it. The ink blot becomes part of the character, its darkness balancing the lightness of the new strokes. When he finishes, the scroll is not what he planned, but it is more alive, more human, than anything he could have created without the mistake. That afternoon, when the temple's abbot arrives to collect the scroll, he pauses when he sees it. "This is not what I expected," he says, running his fingers over the stain. Master Takeshi bows his head. "I apologize, Reverend. A mistake was made." But the abbot shakes his head, smiling. "No mistake. Look, this blotch. It is like the chaos we try to avoid. And these strokes around it, they are how we live with chaos, not against it. This is better than perfection. This is truth. Breathe in, and let that truth settle in your chest. Mistakes are not interruptions to our lives, they are part of our lives." The Buddha taught that life is like a woven cloth, made up of threads, both light and dark. To reject the dark threads is to tear the cloth apart, leaving only a fragment of what could be. Master Takeshi understood this. The beauty of his calligraphy lay not in its perfection, but in its wholeness, in the way it included the accident, the imperfection, the very thing he might once have considered a failure. Modern psychology supports this wisdom. Research on self-compassion by Dr. Kristen Neff shows that people who accept their mistakes, rather than criticizing themselves, are more resilient, less anxious, and better able to learn and grow. When we treat ourselves with kindness in the face of imperfection, we activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest response coming, the amygdala, and allowing our prefrontal cortex to engage, helping us problem solve instead of panicking. Master Takeshi's studio holds hundreds of scrolls, but none are perfect. Some have smudges, others have uneven strokes, a few even have small holes where insects chewed through the paper. But he keeps them all, hanging them on the walls of his studio as reminders. A calligrapher who fears mistakes, he tells his students, is like a bird afraid to fly. They may stay safe, but they will never know the joy of soaring. Think now of the mistakes you carry, the ones that keep you up at night. the ones you hide from others, the ones you use to measure your worth. Maybe it's a relationship you ended badly, a job you quit too soon, a promise you broke. Notice how your body reacts when you bring these memories to mind. A tightness in your throat, a heaviness in your chest, a furrow in your brow. This is your brain's error-related negativity at work, triggering stress and self-criticism. But what if, like Master Takeshi, you could see these mistakes not as flaws, but as part of your story? What if the smudges in your life are what make your story unique, what give it depth and authenticity? Now, bring to mind one mistake you've been holding on to. See it as a smudge on the canvas of your life. Breathe in and acknowledge the pain or shame it brings. No need to push it away. Breathe out and imagine stepping back, seeing the whole canvas, the good moments, the hard moments, the messy in-between moments, all woven together with this smudge. Notice how your perspective shifts. The mistake is still there, but it is no longer the center. It is a thread in the cloth, necessary to the whole. Neuroscientists have found that this kind of reframing, seeing mistakes as part of a larger narrative, activates the default mode network in a healthy way, helping us integrate our experiences rather than fixating on them. It's like taking a puzzle piece that seemed to fit nowhere and realizing it was always part of the picture, just not where you thought. That evening, as the sun sets, Master Takeshi sits in his studio, sipping tea and watching the light play over the smudged scroll. A young student who witnessed the accident that morning asks him, "Master, how did you not get angry when you spilled the ink?" He smiles, gesturing to the scroll. Anger is like trying to erase ink with fire. It only makes the damage worse. The ink was already there. What mattered was what I did next. Life is not about avoiding the smudges, young one. It is about learning to dance with them. This is the wisdom of Zen. Not perfection, but participation. Not avoiding mistakes, but meeting them with curiosity and creativity. Master Takeshi's scroll became more meaningful because of the smudge. Not in spite of it, because it told a truth no perfect scroll could. That beauty is found in the whole, in the light and the dark, in the planned and the unexpected. As we prepare to move forward, let this truth settle in your bones. You are not a scroll to be kept clean of smudges. You are a living, breathing story, and every mistake, every imperfection, is a part of that story, necessary, meaningful, and whole. Breathe in and feel the weight of self-criticism lifting, like fog burning off a lake. Breathe out and let yourself be held by the quiet understanding that you are enough, just as you are, smudges and all. The studio fades now, but the scent of ink remains, a reminder that creation is messy, beautiful, and always in process. Your breath continues, steady and sure, and in this moment there is nothing to fix, nothing to change, nothing to regret. Just this, just now, just you. Breathe in, breathe out, and let that be enough. Let your breath settle into a rhythm as steady as a monk's morning chants. Inhale through your nose, feeling the air curl like smoke into your lungs, warm, alive, full of possibility. Exhale through slightly parted lips, releasing a sigh that carries the weight of the day like a leaf drifting down a stream. With each breath, let your body sink deeper into the surface beneath you, as if the very earth is rising to cradle you, bone by bone, muscle by muscle. We find ourselves in a wooden hut at the edge of a bamboo forest, where sunlight filters through paper screens in golden streaks. The air smells of ink and sandalwood, and somewhere in the distance, a water wheel creaks, its derzo rhythm matching the slow pulse of a brush moving across paper. It is dawn, the hour when the world feels new but not yet awake, and in the center of the room sits Master Hiroshi, his back straight as a pine, his hands holding a brush dipped in black ink. For 70 years, Master Hiroshi has risen at this hour to paint not landscapes or flowers or birds, but circles, simple, unadorned circles, each one drawn in a single, fluid motion. But there is something unusual about these circles. None of them are complete. Each ends a hair's breadth before closing, leaving a tiny gap of silence in the otherwise continuous line. A young novice Takeshi watches from the doorway. He has been studying with the master for 3 years, and this ritual has puzzled him from the start. Why leave the circle unfinished? He finally asks, his voice soft as moss. A circle without end is not a circle at all. It is broken. Master Hiroshi does not look up. He dips the brush in ink, letting the excess drip into a stone bowl with a sound like rain on a roof. And what is broken, he says, his voice as weathered as the scrolls lining the walls. Is the moon broken when it is only half full? Is a song broken because it ends? Takeshi steps closer, his sandals whispering against the straw mat. But a circle is meant to be whole. It represents perfection, the cycle of life, the unity of all things. To leave it incomplete is to dishonor its meaning. The master sets down his brush and turns to face the novice. His eyes are the color of deep water, and in them, Takeshi sees his own reflection. Furrowed brow, tight lips, the weight of his need to understand pressing down on his shoulders. Tell me, Takeshi, the master says, when you breathe in, do you curse the exhale for ending the inhale? When you wake, do you mourn the sleep that must come again? Life is a circle with a gap, my friend. It is the gap that makes it alive. He gestures to the scrolls spread across the low table, hundreds of circles, each with its tiny, intentional gap. This gap is where the magic lives. It is the space between what was and what will be. It is the pause between heartbeats, the silence between notes, the breath that allows the next breath to exist. To close the circle is to trap it in perfection. And perfection is a cage. Let that image settle in your mind. A circle with a gap. Its line smooth and intentional. The empty space as vital as the ink itself. Breathe in and imagine drawing that line with your breath expanding, flowing, curving gently, and then, just before completion, pausing. Exhale into that pause, letting it linger like a question without needing an answer. Zen teaches that life is defined by such gaps. The Buddha called this sunyat, emptiness, not as a void, but as the space that allows existence to unfold. A cup is useful not because of the clay, but because of the emptiness it contains. A song matters not only for the notes, but for the silence between them. And a life gains meaning not in being complete, but in the way it bends, pauses, and opens itself to what comes next. Modern psychology calls our fear of these gaps completion bias, the unconscious drive to finish what we start, to close the loops, to erase the unknown. It is why we lie awake, replaying conversations, why we feel anxious about unresolved tasks, why we chase closure as if it were a treasure buried at the end of a rainbow. Our brains, shaped by millions of years of survival instinct, crave certainty. They want the circle to close because a closed circle feels safe, controllable, known. Neuroscientists have mapped this phenomenon in the prefrontal cortex, where the brain's task monitoring network lights up like a lantern when we encounter an unfinished goal. This network is designed to keep us focused until a task is complete. But in a world of endless to-do lists and unmet expectations, it rarely gets to rest. It becomes a hamster on a wheel, spinning faster and faster as the gaps multiply. An email left unwritten, a relationship left unresolved, a dream left unfulfilled. Takeshi stares at the circles, his confusion softening into something like wonder. But what if the gap feels like a wound? He asks. What if it hurts to leave things unfinished? Master Hiroshi picks up a scroll and holds it to the light. The gap glows as if the sunlight is pouring through it. A wound is a gap, too, he says. It is the body's way of opening to healing. To deny the gap is to deny the healing. To curse the wound is to curse the skin that will grow over it. He sets the scroll down and takes Takeshi's hand, placing a brush in it. Draw a circle, he says, but this time, let yourself feel the gap. Do not fight it. Do not rush to close it. Let it be as it is. Takeshi's hand trembles at first. The brush hovers, then moves slow, deliberate, the ink pooling slightly where the pressure increases. He draws the curve, smooth and steady, until he reaches the point where the line should meet its start, and then he stops. For a long moment, he stares at the gap. It feels wrong, like a sentence without a period, a song without a final chord. His default mode network fires up, screaming, "Finish it, fix it, make it right." But he holds the brush still, breathing into the discomfort, and then gradually the screaming fades. What remains is a quiet awareness. The gap is not a flaw, it is a choice to let the circle breathe, to let it exist in the tension between completion and possibility. You see, Master Hiroshi says, his voice a whisper, the gap is where you live, not in the closed circle of what was or the imagined circle of what should be, but in the open space of what is. Let yourself feel that open space now. Breathe in, and with that breath, acknowledge all the unfinished circles in your life, the projects you started but never finished, the words you wish you'd said, the versions of yourself you thought you'd become by now. They are not failures, they are gaps. And in those gaps, you are still alive, still growing, still capable of drawing the next line. Neuroscience tells us that embracing this incompleteness activates the brain's default mode network in a healthy way, not as a source of anxiety, but as a source of creativity. When we stop fighting the gaps, the prefrontal cortex relaxes, allowing the brain to make new connections, to see patterns we missed when we were fixated on closing the circle. It is why some of our best ideas come in the shower, or during a walk, or in the quiet moments before sleep, when we stop trying to finish and let ourselves be. Master Hiroshi rolls up the scrolls, and Takeshi helps him stack them in a wooden cabinet. Outside, the bamboo sways in the wind, their leaves rustling a song that has no end. Somewhere, a bird begins to sing, its melody rising and falling without resolution. Each circle is a life, the master says, closing the cabinet with a soft click. Mine, yours, the birds, the bamboos. None of them are complete. None of them need to be. Teki thinks of his mother, who died when he was a boy, leaving their final conversation unfinished. He thinks of the poem he started last winter, abandoned when the words wouldn't come. He thinks of the anger he still holds toward his father, a knot he hasn't been able to untie. For years, these gaps felt like weights around his neck, but now, as he looks at the master's circles, he feels them lighten. They are not weights, he realizes. They are bridges connecting the past to the present, the known to the unknown, the I was to the I am. Before we drift toward sleep, let us practice this truth. I invite you to imagine drawing a circle in your mind's eye, not with a brush, but with your breath. Inhale as you draw the curve upward, feeling the line grow smooth and strong. Exhale as you bring it down, curving toward the starting point. And when you reach that point when the circle is almost closed, stop, sit with the gap. Let it exist. Notice the urge to close it, and then let that urge pass, like a cloud moving across the sky. Breathe into the space, and in that breath, recognize that you are not a finished circle. You are a line still being drawn, stories still being told, life still unfolding. Inhale deeply, filling your lungs with the truth of your own incompleteness. Exhale, releasing the need to be anything other than what you are in this moment, with all your gaps and edges and unwritten chapters. The water wheel creaks outside, its rhythm unchanged. The sun climbs higher, turning the golden streaks into a warm glow that covers the scrolls, the master, the novice, and you. In this light, everything feels holy, even the gaps, even the unfinished parts, especially the unfinished parts. As the day fully awakens, Master Hiroshi and Takeshi step outside, leaving the circles behind. The bamboo sways, the bird sings, and life continues unfinished, imperfect, and infinitely precious. And so do you. Breathe in, breathe out, and let that be enough. As we traverse the valleys of these 10 stories, moonlight has quietly spread over every corner of your heart. May these truths about accepting imperfection be your pillow for sound sleep and boat in dreams. Thank you for sharing this journey from Zen Mind Temple.